welcome to Show Studio. We're right in the middle of Milan Fashion Week, and it's the show that everyone gets pretty excited about because you know that you're always going to be really entertained. So we're going to be talking about Versace and unpicking the amazing and impactful work that Donatella Versace does there. I've got a great set of panellists from all across the industry here with me to help unpick what's happening at the House of Versace, but I'll let you guys introduce yourselves to kick things off, starting with you, Katie.
So I'm Katie Barron, and I'm a journalist and an author and head of retail at stylist.com, which is a trends forecasting agency.
I'm Rosanna Falconer. I'm head of digital at Matthew Williamson.
I'm Amarpaul Kalirai, and I'm a photographer.
And I'm Dal Chodha, and I'm a fashion writer.
I want to start by asking, who do we think the Versace woman is, and do we like the Versace woman? Dal, you look really sheepish, so I'm going to go to you.
Who is she? I think that's probably a very pertinent question. Thanks for asking me. And maybe a bit of a problem that the brand seems to also be asking itself within the hallowed palazzos of Versace. I mean, Versace to me represents a very particular moment in time, and I feel like it's kind of suffered in a way because everything has changed, and Versace kind of, it's a thing that everyone I guess thinks that they need to change as everything else changes, but I think Versace doesn't. I hope that it doesn't change because it represents everything that fashion was and what luxury, and there's a real, it's really crude, and I kind of think that that's wonderful. And actually in a sea of this tidal wave of good taste that we're in at the moment, the reason I enjoy looking at Versace shows because it kind of reminds me that there are still people in corners of the world that actually do dress to excess and do have a really great fucking time in these clothes. And I think there's an enjoyment, and you said entertain, I think, and you really do get entertained. What I like about Versace is that I feel like the women that wear these clothes live that life.
Yeah. It's funny because the excess that you're talking about and the kind of fact that there's a certain vulgarity to it. I think we have to be honest and say that there's a sort of certain trashiness, and it's so unapologetic, and I love that about it because it's almost like the anti-normcore. You know, there's been so much discussion about normcore and good taste and bad taste, and I think that idea that she's the kind of more is more, you know, excessiveness, the sort of rock and roll rebellion. It is that form of rebelling against normcore and rebelling against, you know, anti-branding and big logo, big company fatigue. And I think, it's kind of, it's the funny thing is because it's not actually really my personal taste at all. And to be honest, I don't really know anyone that wears it particularly, but it doesn't mean that I don't still appreciate that it's there and think it's important. And I think there's a lot of merit in that in fashion in general, that you need those people where you don't really know who they are, but they sort of stand for something anyway. Yeah.
It's interesting we talked about this kind of like unapologetic Versace is how we like it, because I think it was actually in The Independent, there was a profile on Donatella, and I remember there was a big thing with her menswear for a while where it kind of took this slightly more subdued direction, and then there was about 3 seasons ago she really kind of came back and went for it. And she gave this quote where she said, you know, I was backstage at one of my shows and I was looking at it, I didn't like it, it didn't feel like Versace. She was like, I just wanted to do like proper Versace. And now the menswear is like totally mad. Like in the last one they were all wearing like bed sheets as togas and they were like fishnet underpants, and I was totally Versace. But it feels like she's kind of agreeing with what you guys are saying, that she's really living the heritage of the house, which I think is what you need. I think at the moment people are kind of consolidating what their brands are about.
But also I feel like post kind of now, you know, everyone's writing about London's not this playground anymore, you know, everyone's kind of serious, these brands have kind of grown up and they're quite slick and sophisticated. So that energy that, you know, a 90s John Galliano show or a McQueen show, that kind of doesn't exist anymore. Gaultier, as we know, is going to stop doing his ready-to-wear, so that, you know, these last kind of bastions of theatre and vulgarity are being kind of, have become really outmoded, and I think there are a couple that are still kind of holding on with their acrylic nails, and this is one of them.
Donatella said that the H&M collection gave her a lot of confidence in her brand DNA, and seeing the crowds outside H&M just made me think, actually, there is a market for this, and a young market. And I think, you know, the press release today emphasises the young and the fresh attitude to Versace. Who is the Versace woman? She's my boyfriend's dream. I mean, she is hot stuff.
It's interesting to think about.
And it's like powerful fashion.
It's interesting to think about the actual pieces that like my friends are wearing or whatever, they are all of the logo pieces, and they're all the like Versace print,
the Medusa.
You don't, exactly. You don't see any of the leather dresses or any of that.
Yeah, no, that is interesting. I think that's quite a good point. Is that you would never go to Versace. Right? I'm sure some people do who love the brand, but you wouldn't go to it for a black tailor jacket. You want the kind of Medusa and you
J-Lo
want
dress.
Yeah, exactly.
But she's still want it.
It depends on the clientele.
But it's also kind of exciting because it's Versace by Donatella Versace, which is quite a rare thing these days. So I think that's exciting as well. And you feel like you've got the real lifeblood of the brand there, living and breathing it. So
no, that is interesting. I want to talk a bit about. That's interesting that you kind of talked about that heritage of the house and her role there, because I think Versace is one of those houses that has this incredible history. And I remember when Jonathan Anderson was doing Versus, I was interviewing him at his studio about something different, but he had all those old Versace catalogues and he was looking through them, and I think there is this incredible rich history to Versace, especially in terms of imagery, like all that amazing Bruce Weber stuff that's really, really iconic and it's influenced so many different people. And I'm just interested to get your guys' opinion on like the heritage of the house. Do you love all that old photography and stuff? Because it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, with Claudia Schiffer, it's like unreal pictures.
Yeah, and I feel like it is stuff that people don't. I don't know, maybe people. I think it's very fashion. Like a lot of stylists reference it, and everyone kind of knows about it, but it doesn't perhaps get talked about as much as it should. Like all those amazing catalogues that they used to do. Do you kind of pore over stuff like that?
Kind of, but I do feel like anyone working for Versace shouldn't need to look at any of that stuff. I think there's something inherent in you. If you get this, you get it. So almost that idea of having to educate yourself in the world of Versace kind of cancels out Versace, because it is. I mean, it's so linked to being Italian that I think it's really hard. You know, we were just saying before the cameras went live that I think for the first time an Italian designer's been the guest designer for Versus, which we're looking at now. And it shows, because it looks as it's much more accomplished than it has been for the last couple of seasons, in my opinion. It sort of just looks more what we want it to be. And I think, you know, the Italian designers tend to be in two camps. You either get the sort of the ugly chic camp, you've got your Marni's and your, you know, Mrs. Prada's, and then you've got this kind of sexy kind of trashy woman. And so there are just those two very distinct. There's of course a new guard who are trying to kind of do something different, but those are the two extremes that we see. So it's quite nice to kind of see that. Yeah, no, 100%. I think it's interesting though, because it's interesting we say, you know, sexy for Versace, because I guess that's maybe what I was kind of thinking about when I asked that question, is there's this notion where I think it's very easy to simplify Versace and be like, oh, and we were talking about it again, as you said before we went live, just like how every guest designer that's brought in to do Versus just seems to kind of see a safety pin and then get no further. And it is really easy to simplify Versace and say that it's just about, you know, the Medusa and the safety pin and Liz Hurley and sex, and that's it. And I think that's what I maybe kind of think with those catalogues, is you look at it and you realise kind of, you know, the amazing pastels or the amazing, I don't know, like some of the tartans and all these kind of incredible different codes of the house, and it makes you realise how varied it is. And I think it's very interesting to be at Versace show, and it's interesting what you said about Donatella and see her work with those codes, because you feel like everything that they do now they have done before, because the house is so varied, which is interesting. Do we like that they're always bringing in young designers to kind of go through? Do you think that was part of the impetus to bring in these young designers to do Versus, to try and get them to interpret all this material so differently? I think it's quite a smart thing, because I think it's a huge sort of move towards keeping relevant, making sure that she can kind of still remain as the lifeblood of Versace, but then you have this other strand that starts to come through it that can kind of pick up on threads of that, but also sort of take it somewhere further. So I think it's a really smart thing to do. It's almost, you know, it's like being a magazine and having guest editors. Yeah, sure, that's interesting. So I don't know what you think, but I think it's a good. I think they've done it very successfully so far, actually.
Anthony Vaccarello, his latest collection, I think it was one of, I mean, I love Christopher Kane, and his first collection for Versus is one of my favourite things he's ever done. But this one, I think Tim Blanks described it as Versace in style versus in attitude, and I think that just captures it perfectly. And they have several videos of the two of them talking about the design process and the creative process, all on their site. They've got a great digital platform and output, and they seem to have a very good working relationship. She feeds off his youth and his attitude, and is inspired by that. I think it works very well, certainly from this first season.
See, when MIA, when she went and did that capsule collection with Versace. I understood that because I felt like she was taking Versace to a street level. Like she was giving it street cred or whatever.
Exactly.
But then when J.W. Anderson and Christopher Kane did it, I felt like it was taking it into another, it was taking it into another category of fashion, like Marni and that side of it. It was taking it away from Versace. So I didn't really understand that as much. But this guy that did it, Anthony, it just totally works for me.
It makes perfect sense.
I think the MIA thing was really interesting actually, because I think I'm doing a lot of work to do with music and fashion relationships between that at the moment, and I interviewed a stylist recently who works a lot in music, and there's so many similarities in the way that she talks about this kind of, you know, when she said, when you go out, always put something extra on. It's almost like the anti-norm called the anti-Chanel fashion philosophy. And I think, you know, working with MIA, kind of music is a totally, it's an amazing platform for her. It makes total sense. There's such a synergy there in that kind of, you know, larger than life. You know, nothing Donatella does really is day wear. It's almost everything. Even wearing it, you're wearing it for a stage.
Yeah.
You know, in one respect, I think.
And that's Donatella. She had this amazing quote, which I like to think I live by, but I don't think anyone could have said. She basically said, "I am glamour. I wake up in the morning. I do glamour immediately." Alex Schulman was interviewing her, and she was asked, "What do you wear when you're relaxing, watching television?" And Donatella replied, "Exactly this." And she was there in like leather pants.
This is relaxing.
Yeah, this is my casual wear.
I mean, I think she's probably even more.
Yeah, me too. I totally believe it.
She's probably even more focused on it now since, obviously, you know, Gianni kind of went. So, because I guess it feels like she's kind of carrying both. She's keeping him alive and herself. So she's become this sort of monster, this glamazon monster. So it's kind of it's become even more.
Because I mean, she is a cartoon. Let's face it. Isn't
and
she?
I think that's
the ice bucket challenge. Did you see her ice bucket challenge? It was just absolutely amazing.
And that's what I think that's what you've come to expect from Versace as well. You've come to expect that you're going to be lounging like on a gold sofa in leather dresses.
Because I mean, you know, if you think about it, the cartoon thing. I mean, you know, you've got her, you've got Jean-Paul Gaultier, you've got Karl Lagerfeld. They're all people that, like, for all I know, don't actually really exist. In some respects, do you know what I mean? They could be puppets being manned by other people somewhere. I don't know.
Designed by Matt Groening.
And I like that. They might have, you know, died years ago. Who knows? But it's. I think there's something kind of special and really fashion about that. That's brilliant. I think the artifice of it all.
Yeah, no, it is incredible. It's amazing. I have two quite specific questions to ask. One of which is about the New York and them showing Versus in New York, and there was a lot of excitement, I think, just to see something kind of like all the words that we've been saying, kind of larger than life and sexy in New York. Do you think that was a really smart move to take Versus to New York?
Yeah, because it was such a breath of fresh air for New York. I think people were feeling that New York this season, there were quite casual vibe, sporty vibe, very commercial vibe, and then there was this sex on legs, gorgeous maximalism. So that made an impact.
It also, I think, avoids Versus being kind of overshadowed by Versace, and just splitting them up. It just, you know, when they're really together, you go to the same show space, and it's a bit kind of like, it's interesting for that.
It's also kind of making like it a bit more universal as well.
Exactly.
Showing it in two different cities.
Yeah.
Why does it matter? Why does it have to be shown in Milan? Why does it have to be shown in New York? I think that might be like a really interesting thing for the future of shows. Showing them everywhere. Showing them everywhere,
like Chanel with the Métier d'Art.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
interesting.
These guys, as we were saying earlier, have nailed the future of shows, and Donatella's very plugged in digitally, and you can shop all the Versus looks now.
Yeah, what did you think? Do you think that that's kind of absolute? Because you were just.
I think it's. Oh gosh, it's the way things are going. So we had our show on Sunday for Matthew Williamson at London Fashion Week, and the interest from the customer, the online customer, is absolutely there. They want it now. I had a woman on the phone being like, no, seriously, why not? I want to wear it to my wedding after party, October the 4th, gown, look 26, please, I'll do anything. And she's not interested in the February show, which is in the shop now. She's seen it's not just that like 5 years ago it was in the national newspapers. She's watched the live stream, she's seen the video, she's seen it all over blogs, all over Instagram. The consumer can't wait, and Donatella's really pioneering this.
Plus, it's also, we were talking about this again beforehand, that it's for a kind of global audience now. Or actually, whether, you know, summer, spring, it doesn't really matter. Really, people now, we think are just doing collections twice a year. And because this for me, when I was looking at all the shows, over the last couple of weeks, you almost can't tell for the first time ever whether it's spring, summer, autumn, winter. Yeah, actually, it's really difficult to decipher it because it just doesn't really matter. You just do your 2 collections, and it just spins off from that. And people are travelling all the time. The weather is different. There just aren't the same kind of.
I almost think the industry should miss a season so that designers can catch up. Because let's not forget about the pressures that they're under. And then start. Because I mean, the reason that it's difficult to do because of course for production. But if we kind of almost miss a season so that designers have time to work out the back end, then I think this is a business model that I can't believe more people aren't doing it.
Or do it in the kind of Moschino way, and aesthetics of Moschino aside, because I thought it was the worst thing I'd ever seen.
Those blonde wigs.
I just can't
Can we get one
about
for
it.
you?
Oh my god, the Barbie! I loved the Barbie.
What?
It made me so happy.
Oh my god, no!
Watching the chick walk down the thing with this.
Fashion month
it was
thing.
amazing.
Yeah, I just found it so offensive.
So funny.
It was like, but I just couldn't laugh at it. I think it's like, oh.
There are times, putting it back to Versace, there are times when I think Versace is so wrong that it's right. With the Moschino thing, I was like, just wrong.
But also, because Barbie is such a symbol of like, okay, I shouldn't talk about it because I talked about it yesterday.
Don't slag off Barbie.
But to talk about the model that they do, I think is very smart, which is selling kind of, the iPhone cases and the bags quite quickly.
So Moschino, and I think Moschino's one is more achievable. They put out news today. There are 30 pieces. And it's really cute, like little iPhone cases and things.
I'm not sure how much I like this, like available the second after it's shown. Like I remember I saw like, how Alexander Wang's doing that capsule collection with H&M or whatever, and it's coming out in November. I saw Rihanna wearing it somewhere or something, right? She had like full look already, and I was like, wait, what? It's September. Why is she wearing this already? And like looking at it, I had seen a few pieces from the H&M collection and I thought, oh, those are pretty cool. I totally want to get one or whatever. But then seeing Rihanna with it, I was like, why do I want it now? She already has it.
Isn't that
She's
the same
worn
impetus
it.
though? You're bored of it already.
I don't know if I like that idea though.
Yeah.
People are so impatient nowadays.
Yeah, but it's like, I want to like see a collection, digest it, see how it develops in society.
How people edit it, buy it.
And then like that's what I always love about Prada is that Prada I see and I'm always like, okay, what does she do there? And then 6 months down the line, I'm like, I get it. And I've caught up.
Yeah, no, I think you're right actually. That's a really astute point because I think there's that element of, I think part of the skill to being a really good designer is not just doing something that people will want now, it's doing something that will make sense in 6 months. And I worry that we take away a bit of the creative side of designing where some of the best designers are the ones that predict stuff, and that's I think letting them have the opportunity to do that, to say this is what society is going to think in 6 months.
That's why they're designers.
Well, it's interesting because there is a bit of a movement in the way that consumers behave that I've been looking at recently, that although we still have the kind of want it now, and I think fashion shows are a slightly different thing because there's the buzz of fashion shows, but in general, because we're all kind of life loggers now, we're always taking photos, we're sharing things, we're debating them, actually it's kind of changing that sort of frenzy of sort of the buy it now frenzy into a sort of hold and consider culture, where actually we are starting to consider things and share things, debate them with our friends, think about it, think how it fits into our lives. So actually there's a sort of, it's kind of the fast and the slow. There is definitely still the fast.
But I guess, if there are more...
shows force that in a way.
Fashion weeks are they're not for us anymore. They're kind of, there are more customers watching. There are more people that will go and buy one of these dresses than there are people that are going to critique them and intellectualize them. And I think, fashion has to kind of react to, react to that because it's a business at the end of the day, and that's very sad.
No, I guess at the end of the day, it's for they need to make money, and that's what it's about.
And I think retailers would benefit, maybe there are just some designers that naturally should be doing that already, and there are some that shouldn't. The Pradas and the ones that deserve more time to think about their collections, I think shouldn't necessarily rush towards that.
Plus some of that stuff you just can't produce. I mean, because Burberry found that when they were selling things immediately as well, and they found that there was only certain items they could produce quickly, and so for the other things they had to start doing all this kind of virtual trickery. So by the time you actually got your piece, you would have had videos of it being made, and then it would be sort of monogrammed and all these kind of things that your phone could unlock it.
People that want to see a video of their trendy.
I think it really goes for most luxury fashion brands who show at Fashion Week. Really, I mean, for us, it's that we cannot produce the intricacy and the exquisite embroidery and embellishment within that time frame. We need that season. But the BFC with because this line of Fashion Week was all about digital, and they were really pushing the Twitter buy it now button, which was launched in September, and at the Burberry show, and I think at a couple of others, Natalie Massenet spoke about it in kind of her opening speech, you were able, from a tweet about the catwalk show, to press a buy it now and buy it straight there and then. Through a tweet.
It just makes it
I mean,
much
that's
less
quite
special.
something.
Yeah, which is kind of extraordinary when you think about the amount of money you're actually paying for this stuff. You know? It really is.
Scarf,
it's not insignificant.
But I think what it's doing is, you know that thing when you're on a row at a show and someone gets their phone out to take a picture and then everyone else does, and it's like that competitive, I don't want to miss out, I'm going to picture this because they're taking a picture of it. I think it's transporting that feeling to the shopper of like, this person's buying it, I should buy it. And
but these beautiful clothes have just been reduced to being souvenirs.
Well, they've been reduced to being likes, haven't they?
Band T-shirts. You know, someone kind of mentioned something about Victoria Beckham wearing a band T-shirt the other day online, saying, "Oh, I bet she doesn't even know any of their songs or whatever." It's very much. But maybe it's going to a gig and buying the T-shirt.
Maybe
people are buying the stuff from the show.
Maybe that's where trend forecasting is going. It's going to a place where it's right now, and that's it. There's no future. There's no forecasting.
No, I think it's about the chunks of it. I think you know, the bit that it's like the band T-shirt, as we sort of discussed with some of where you actually produce things. It's just small pockets. It's just like the merch from the show. It's not the main event. It's not the meat of these collections.
It's the gift shop.
It's the gift shop. Exactly.
Because I went to a very interesting talk the other day by Katie. But you were speaking, or your colleagues were speaking about the fact that it's very difficult for trend forecasters nowadays. You can't do this. It used to be a biannual trend forecast, and now you tell me more because I can't remember. You have a different way of trend forecasting.
Now it's more about kind of looking at tribes. It's sort of looking at tribes and looking about how tribes are influenced by what's happening culturally and socially and technologically, and so it's more the kind of, because the tribes don't evolve that quickly. It's still over a kind of course of years. So it's sort of charting how these tribes grow slowly, or how one tribe infiltrates another more than the kind of, I mean, I don't do the trend forecasting in terms of this is blue's going to be the big colour next year. It's a bit different for me, but the guys that do the product stuff, now it's more about the tribes that they're looking at for sure.
That's interesting, because I feel like we do so many panels where people talk about this idea that everyone just wants to be kind of uniform and that there isn't this sense of kind of groupings anymore. Do you think that that's kind of a bit of
not so much. Honestly, I wouldn't say quite so much, and I think you'll probably every season you'll probably get kind of 8 to 10 sort of different groupings, but it's interesting to see how a sort of smaller faction, you know, a sort of Scandinavian design will then sort of slightly morph into a different version of normcore that's slightly sexier version of normcore, etc.
I think the tribe, they're more nuanced now, aren't they? So there's a slight difference, but visually they might all look the same, but there's a kind of a different lifestyle.
Yeah, because you're getting this kind of funny split at the moment, especially with really young people, where they want to kind of have the belonging of belonging to a tribe, but then they're also desperate to stand out, because there's that whole thing of not even buying the same item. If you see your mate on Facebook or Instagram wearing the same thing, you can't wear it again. It's really weird. It's like the sort of celeb thing of not going on a TV show or being seen twice in the same outfit, and now you've got young people having the same thing because of social media. So you've kind of got a sort of schizophrenic version of that in a way.
I guess it's the same thing as me seeing Rihanna in like
totally completely.
It's scary because I wonder if there's I just don't think anyone's done any reports. I haven't read anything strong on it, but I wonder if that's the case with looks that are bought really fast from the catwalk. I'd be really intrigued to know if they're bought to be worn once or if they're bought and worn a lot. That'd be really interesting.
Who they're bought by? I mean,
exactly.
Yeah, but if you look at Versus, that's trendless. It's just hot, sexy dresses.
I know. I actually looked at it and pondered by.
Everyone.
I genuinely I went on Matches and looked at it. And I was
hot,
like,
sexy dresses that
but the dresses sold out. Just on Matches, the 2 like safety pinny dresses sold out like that. Like they'd sold out by the time I saw it.
But clearly, this buy now after the show isn't geared towards their core clients, whoever the designer may be, because they're not the core client, the core buyer. They're not going to go out and click buy right now.
They'd have their appointment in store on Sloane Street.
So maybe it's.
But I wonder if they would now, because they feel like, because I think that's interesting that you talked about H&M before, Rosanna, because that's one thing that I found really interesting. Because I remember going to the H&M store and talking to people that were in the queue, just because I'm a nerd and I thought it was interesting to do that. And there was this guy, and he was like saying how he was a really old Italian guy. He was really old. He was about 85, and he was saying how he always bought Versace, and he was like queuing up to get it. And I wonder if there is that sense where people, when they feel familiar, they're willing to kind of buy immediately or queue or do that, you know. I don't know. I wonder if those are the people.
The H&M collaborations are difficult though, because there's such a frenzy behind them that is fueled by so many different things, and a lot of it is fueled by, like you were saying, I need it now, I need it before everyone else, before Rihanna, or just after her. And then the other group that just want to put it all on eBay and make loads of money out of it. And then there's the group that actually are collectors, so people are archiving these things, and they'll probably pop up in shoots in 20 years' time that we've forgotten about. And that's a really interesting idea, people archiving high street clothes. It's something that really fascinates me.
It is, definitely.
Because they're archiving things that essentially are not special, but they are allegedly, I mean, they started off, I remember with the first, was it Karl Lagerfeld or Viktor and Rolf, one of the early H&M, you know, it was limited edition, you know, in the true sense that it was kind of, it came out once and then if you didn't get it, you didn't get it. But now they kind of, that's not true, because people queue for ages to get stuff and then it's kind of replenished. Like the Marni H&M stuff was in there for about a month and a half. So it's not as hard to get hold of these things anymore, which I think is quite interesting as well. But why are people collecting them? And where are they all? Are they in tissue paper? I mean, are these kind of sweatshirts wrapped up in a
It's interesting because I was at St Martin's when that Versace collection came out, and that's why I was there, because my tutor said he sent all of the students to go and interview people in the...
Amazing.
And I didn't get the complexities of it, and I wish we'd had this discussion before, because I was a bit like just talking to
But also, did you see anyone at college wearing it at the time?
Who was wearing it?
Yeah, did any of the students go and buy it? Because if these guys at CSM or whatever art school are not in that queue, then that again is a very interesting question, because I guess people think that if you're into fashion, that's kind of what you should be doing. Actually, what are
I think lots of fashion people I know wear the Marni for H&M one. I just don't. I think it's the same as lots of fashion. We don't know fashion people that wear Versace. I don't, but I know tons of fashion people that wear. That wear.
I think there is a certain kind of consumer who will buy the H&M exclusive collection every year, independent of the designer. And for us, when we did it, it was fantastic, and it meant we reached this whole new consumer globally.
Because you did men's and women's.
Men's and women's. We had marble arch with a peacock feather gleaming onto it. Wonderful moment. And it does me, and I think the H&M, the budgets behind the H&M collections mean that the product actually really is. I've got a few pieces from the Karl Lagerfeld one, and the product is of such high quality that it
the Marni one made me question why I spend X amount of money on Marni shirts, because the men's Marni H&M shirt honestly felt exactly the same, and I think that was for me as a consumer, it kind of worked against Marni, because I was a bit like, well, hang on a minute, what am I paying for on this side?
I interviewed Consuelo about that collaboration quite recently, actually, long story why, and they talked about that was the biggest thing for her. I don't think they did it so much for the core Marni fan, they did it to bring in new shoppers to Marni, and I spent ages on the fabrications, and I think basically what they wanted to do was almost like give away a free sample and then get people to buy it again. So I think it was
it's probably a lost leader, isn't it?
Get like a young girl to be like, oh, these silver sandals are really cute, the polka dot jacket, and the fabric's great as well.
And then the only time they can get them again is actually buying by
going into Marni, which was interesting.
Has it worked?
Yeah. I think there are younger girls that are into Marni now, definitely. I think so. Like even just my girlfriends that don't work in fashion, I love Marni, I wear quite a lot of Marni, and if I say it to them, they know it and they've gone into the store, they know, they'll be like, oh, the jewellery's great, and these aren't girls that are interested in fashion. And I do think, I'm sure a lot of that is the H&M effect. Even just that like Sofia Coppola film, I think they kind of thought it was a cool thing, whereas I doubt maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, your average 20-something girl would know Marni. But I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. Should we watch the show for Versace?
Sure.
That's interesting, isn't it?
That's from a
twisted graphic.
Do you know, I would like to see like an extraordinary like universe of Versace sometimes at the shows though.
I think Galliano.
Do you ever miss? I don't know. I missed that a bit.
Can you imagine?
More of a Versace spectacle.
Yeah, spectacle.
Lions,
tigers. Something more than a catwalk, you know.
Men in boxes with palm fronds.
Yeah, I think so.
It's interesting because the first line of the press release says stripped back and bold, which kind of feels like a contradiction, but then you look at it and it is
stripped back.
Stripped back.
Stripped.
Yeah.
No. That's just that look. Crop top and mini skirt.
Alex Fury was talking about his favourite line for a press release ever, and I think it was an Italian brand.
When they're so contradictory.
It was colourful. No, it was black, yet colourful. Which I thought was really good.
Yeah, it's funny as well. It says here as well, colours are strong. I don't know how many strong
I think that'll come up later.
I hope so.
I love the way she used dual colours for day wear last season. I think that, so I'm interested to see how she uses colour this season. I think she's becoming more confident with colour. Here we go, the first colour.
I mean, they are desperate to have an it bag. I mean, it's kind of like insane how they don't
have a bit,
because I mean they don't know one.
Good
even
point.
Because the entry level point for maybe us and the people that we know would be the handbag or the small leather good, but I mean I don't know anyone that has a Versace bag or wallet or anything like that. So I mean, and that's why they keep trotting them out.
It's a lot less rock and roll than the last couple of collections, isn't it?
Maybe all the rock and roll
feels much sportier as well. You know, I never really think of Versace as being sporty at all, whereas this, even just like the way that kind of the graphic and kind of Greek Roman print was used almost like, you know, a waistband on boxers on some of those kind of, you know, really sporty.
It's kind of weird. I'm like having a bit of a hard time with it in a way, because it's not that I dislike it, it's just not got much of the excess that we were talking about. I'm a bit like, would I even definitely know it was Versace?
And where's all the blonde hair?
No, I know.
There's no blonde hair.
It's not even a permatan anywhere to be seen yet.
But it was really smart, I think, what you said about the Versus being in New York and it being about trying to build a global brand.
Maybe.
Because one thing that they did at the men's is they had all like the homeware in the bags, and the homeware was all tied to the walls, and like the boys almost came out like literally holding plates. It was ridiculous. But it was very funny, and it kind of went with that vibe. But also the clear message was like, Versace's a global brand. Versace's a huge global
brand. That's Versace for me
brand.
On the catwalk right there. Knee-high, slick boots.
Yeah, because quite frankly, it's a bit less tasteful than some of the other
Perspex Mini,
isn't it?
But then with a baggy silk shirt, that's quite.
Yeah, but the baggy silk shirt's got a good print on it, a Versace-esque print, hasn't it? And they mentioned.
See, I like this. Is the only Versace collection I've ever seen that I'd actually consider wearing.
Oh, really?
I like this skirt.
No, that's the thing. I like it. I'm just sort of.
I love the slit in that skirt.
Yeah.
But there is a lot. If you look back at Versace, there is a lot of tailoring and a lot of day suits that people forget about. Like, you know, Amber Valletta in that incredible kind of campaign where she's like a Stepford wife at home.
Yes.
Or incredible. And a lot of, you know, every time you walk past the Versace store, there's always a tailored. There's always a shift in the window, and a shift dress isn't that outrageous, you know.
And these little pastel minis, it's like the campaign with the supermodels.
Yeah,
where they're all going like that.
One.
This is completely.
I mean, it's quite kind of. It's like Miami Versace, isn't it?
Yeah, and she's got all the girls wearing watches as well. When did the Versace girls wear watches?
Oh,
yeah, when they launched for them.
When they launched a new watch.
I thought their drivers
what they need a watch for,
Their limited edition Versace watches.
The drivers know what time it is.
Vivid crop straps.
A vivid crop strap.
I think someone might be holding a pen at some point as well.
Oh.
The new Versace collection of pens is decorated with icons of the house.
Are they shoppable?
Keep your eyes peeled. Keep your eyes peeled.
Yeah, I wonder if the watches and the pens will be.
Oh no, there were pens in the bag. Actually, they were kind of. Did you just say that?
That's shameless product placement, isn't it?
But then you think, why not? You know, if
Burberry did it with the phones, didn't they? One season they had everyone with all the models had phones.
Yeah.
I'm so
and you saw it when Fendi. Oh my god, that was awful. At the Fendi men's show, some of the models were wearing headphones, which it was like they were really cool headphones, but I was like, don't send a poor model down the catwalk with headphones.
That's nice. All these eyelets.
This is a bit more like it.
That's good.
See, I feel like that's the kind of thing that I can imagine selling really, really well.
Yeah.
That was a nice sound, Dal.
So ugly.
Yeah, I don't think my boyfriend would be all over that look, actually. Maybe I'd take back my first phrase and statement.
That's a good point, though. It's like
but I like that she's bringing the signatures in different ways. You know, we expect a lot of cutouts and shears, but it's interesting she's doing with them, like with the eyelet. I just think she's trying to do something modern and young.
Yeah.
I think the colour stuff works better, actually.
That's great. That's a really cute little 60s shape there.
Just in terms of pushing the legacy forward a bit.
Well, I guess she's still doing the couture, isn't she? So that's her bit where she goes kind of evening and J-Lo.
Yeah.
But maybe this is what she's trying to do with Versus, is maybe with what Anthony did with Versus this season. Kept it
that pushed home all the typical codes of Versace.
Yeah. And now this looks so different.
Yeah.
Because this doesn't give me, I mean, that's still quite sexy, but it's not as sexy as I would have
I just think they're trying to be
expected.
really brand smart, and it goes back to what we were saying about the watches and the pens and all of that and the homeware. I think she's trying to establish an old school fashion brand where you have your couture, and then you have your ready to wear, and then you have your kind of diffusion, and then you have your homeware. I think she's trying to separate out those areas,
and give them identity,
make them really global and grow them. I think it's quite smart, you know, that you have a bit more difference between it, because there was a while where I think the couture and Versace and they all kind of like, whereas you're right, it is all kind of splitting up, and I think that's really, really smart.
And the couture show actually for autumn winter wasn't bling bling bling, it was tailored and quite pared back, and the sexiness didn't come through till the final look. So
this is more like it.
Yeah, this is fabulous.
Here we go. Oh, here we go.
That reminds me of the Jodie Marsh belt dress. Do you remember?
Really highbrow reference.
I never thought we'd be talking about that.
Well, you know, I like to pull my references far away.
Don't tweet her.
It's interesting because, like, I think as well, like, normally when you're watching a fashion show, you think that every look is going to be quite, like, in your face.
Yeah.
Really, like, punching you in the face. This is what our collection looks like.
Yeah.
Whereas she started with, like, really wearable looks.
Yeah.
And then got into
It's a
Versace.
really diverse show, it is, you're right.
This is clever what she's doing here with the placement of the transparent
That's actually
panels
brilliant.
Yeah, it looks beautiful. That's really cool.
That's really cool.
I actually think it's a really good collection. I'm slightly confused by the identity crisis that's going on.
But that happens. I think that's a real staple of Versace collections. I think they are really varied. I think they really, really are. I think Versace collections, like, we always tend to remember 2 or 3 looks, the ones that go on all the trend pages or become kind of the ones really shared on social media. But if you actually go through Versace collections, I think they're always very, very, very varied. And I think this will probably become what we remember from this collection.
Yeah, for sure.
I think so.
What kind of fabric do we think this is?
Is it Swarovski or something?
It looks like Swarovski, like chainmail.
Individually
I think it's
beaded.
chainmail.
Yeah. And that
It's it says Swarovski crystal mesh dresses.
Because these dresses are almost like, it's like Victoria's Secrets model going out with a rock star or something.
Yeah.
It's that whole one.
But this you'll see on every music star, like it'll be.
Yeah, I can't wait for that.
But also, I love you know, you mentioned that iconic supermodels pastels. Like, I think that's such
there
Well,
is
just look how the
definitely
girls walk. I mean,
Yeah.
it really
they
does.
have a strut.
Yeah.
Look at Marie Cole just go
It's
mental.
old school catwalking, isn't it?
It's
Yes, she is. Look at her.
for
Yeah.
sure. There's no dreary flat shoe and a really nice jumper. You know, it's actually like, here I am.
Stomping.
Yeah.
It's
I want to see what she's wearing. I really want to see what she's wearing.
Black, blonde hair, tan.
Hopefully.
I just want to see
Smoky
what her
eye.
face looks like.
Yeah. So good.
Can we zoom in?
I think what's really smart about this is I feel like she's very good at homing in on the bit of the Versace archive that fits with the current spirit, and I feel like at the moment everyone is doing kind of pastels and glitzy stuff, and you know that
60s shapes.
60s stuff, kind of 70s stuff as well, and, but also just those pastel, you know, if you go on, even if you just look on Tumblr or Instagram, that's the period from Versace that's getting shared a lot at the moment. It's not the kind of Medusa, it's those kind of pastel supermodels. And I feel like she's very good at picking up on what part of the archive feels right.
Yeah, I agree.
For me, the bit that I thought kind of really hit nail on the head was literally just there's like a buckle on one of them.
Yeah.
And it just felt like it kind of crystallised the entire legacy in that one piece.
From a distance, they do remind me of Mary and Holly Fulton, those prints.
Yes,
Yeah.
I thought that.
Yeah. She'll be coming out soon, Katie.
I know, I'm waiting.
Yeah. The goddess, the Medusa.
It's just because she always comes out wearing something from the collection, unlike most designers, so I want to see, I can't work out which bit it will be.
Yeah, it makes for a stunning lineup.
Because she waits till everyone's off the catwalk, then I'll come.
Her moment to shine.
Oh my god.
Oh, she's got a strut. She looks great.
See, she's not.
She's got the the Diamante waistband.
Oh my god, she's fabulous.
Blonde tick, tan tick.
Yeah, smoky
Bit of
eye
glitz.
tick.
Yeah.
It's very good.
Glossy lip tick.
She's fabulous. But
I feel more comfortable now I've seen her out.
she does exist.
Yeah.
She is real.
Well, yeah.
But it's interesting because we've spoken on a few panels about this notion of designers, this idea of not trying not to have star designers anymore. And it was really interesting what you were saying about how you love that she's still there, because I feel like there is this sense, and we've talked about it before, and I think the press pick up on it quite a lot, of this idea of the carousel of designers, where a young designer is brought into a house, given a couple of seasons, they move on, and there's always this notion that the house is never bigger than, that the design is never bigger than the house. And maybe that, it's interesting, you know, we've never done a panel where everyone's like, I want to see her, I want to wait for them to come out.
Because sometimes, to be honest, I get a bit bored of when we all, and I do it as much as anyone, we talk about the kind of codes of the house and translating it and modernising it. Sometimes I kind of want to have a more sort of visceral, intuitive feeling from the house. You know, what does the house think? The person is the house. And I find that quite pleasing sometimes.
Yeah, it's good we mentioned it about Armani on the other panel I did. But I mean, how appalling was that? But at least you know that he's been at the helm of it.
Yeah,
He's really driven it, and I think that for those houses that have been going for so long, you're just like, there's something so honourable about that.
Because you feel that it's more the collection from the designer rather than the brand and the house. And this kind of
it feels much more authentic.
You kind of, it just allows you just that 10 minutes or whatever of pulling away from the monolithic brands that we're always
and she
talking
is
about.
Versace, isn't she?
It feels like she's touched everything in it.
So.
And fashion can feel quite anonymous. You know, when you get a garment, even if you know it's Wang at Balenciaga or Kiskeya at Vuitton, you get this sense of like, but who actually designed this? But who actually thought of this idea? Is it something he's been told to do? Is it something that's an archive? Is it something he wanted to do? And I know she obviously has a design studio, but you do, when it's Armani, as you say, or when it's Versace, you do get this a slight more sense of, yes, everything was touched by them, when I just don't think you have that when you have this kind of sense of designers being pulled all different ways, you know. You don't have that when you look at Raf Simons Dior. I love Raf Simons Dior, but you don't get this sense of like that personal, like this is his idea of what it should be. That's interesting. But maybe people don't want that anymore, that kind of idea of...
I think consumers now want a story more than ever.
Do you?
Because of the access that they crave and have to designers now. The designer's no longer in the ivory tower, and they're fascinated by, for us, it's how many beads, how many sequins, how many hours of embroidery it took, what first inspired.
But is it more about that than about Matthew?
I think it's... Yeah, okay, so it's the contrast of, first of all, the story of the garment. I think that's important for luxury fashion. For example, here it will be exactly how the Swarovski gave that kind of chainmail liquid effect, because this is an expensive garment. And then they do always love, you've always got that magic touch of the reference
Matthew found in his garden,
and or in this case to Donatella, it has a real power.
No,
she does.
Yes, I did.
It was barley, but you know. And I think a design nowadays, a brand, the consumer craves so many stories from it. The designer at the helm is always the magic, the kind of cherry on the cake. But I think they're interested in so much more.
Well, the collection used to tell us, as in the industry, a story, and then everyone in the industry was allowed to tell their own. And now, actually, as you're saying,
the brand is
there needs to be so many stories that everyone who's looking at this can find.
But does that go back to the pace issue? You know, you've got 6 months, you have to come up with lots of things to be able to say about this garment. It's no longer enough to just be like, look at it, it looks great. You have to come up with a story for the first month that you're waiting for it to go into practice, and then for the second, you know, there's got to be a lot more to kind of encourage people to buy it.
That's why I actually think that the designer that's behind the scenes has never been more important in a way, because you want access to them, their vision of what they think this woman is like, their lifestyle, you know, how do they behave, all of that kind of stuff really sells things, I think, and kind of as it quite rightly should, because if you're spending a lot of money, you're buying into an entire kind of lifestyle and somebody's vision of that lifestyle. So I think the designer behind it's never been more important. Really.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, and I think consumers expect that. You know, it's interesting. I actually can't remember who I was talking to. I don't think it was on a panel. It was about the reason that Mary Katranzu has built such an incredible brand so quickly, and we were talking about what Mary does in kind of, she's so on it with like the trunk shows and going, you know, she's always traveling. She goes to her shoppers and talks them through collections and does all of that. And I think there is that notion that consumers expect that from the designer.
Yeah, it's a bit like, you know, someone like Alexander Wang, who's constantly, you know, the sort of Erin Wasson girl, his sort of coterie of models that he's sort of his muses. You know, you buy into that because in a way you probably see yourself as a bit as if you either think you are or want to be. You aspire to be one of those girls. Yeah, exactly.
And at the end of the day, it's just a name, and so you have to be able to identify that name with something. Whether that's a buckle, a pin. Whatever Alexander Wang wants to identify.
The qualities are kind of given, isn't it? And I do think you're right about the kind of the process of these things, and there's a huge interest factor in there. But ultimately, it's the lifestyle that you're buying
like
into.
vision.
What kind of woman are you? You know,
and defining yourself and being able to say, I'm wearing Versace tonight. Look at me. I'm that powerful woman. I'm fierce.
But it's interesting because we say that, but then I think we all agree always on these panels that, you know, we're seeing less and less of that in houses, you know, especially in New York, which we talked about at the start because of the Versace show. Like, you can't tell one brand from another sometimes. You could show me thumbnails and I can't tell you what, like, I don't know, Derek Lam stands. I literally could not tell you at all. And I'm interested in that because I think we're seeing that more and more and more, that it's just impossible to talk about like what people stand for and what their unique point is, and maybe that's why a brand like Versace, you know, we're all happy to be here and talking about it because it feels a little bit more.
In London, I think you can. Maybe it's because I worked at the BFC and so studied the designers basically, but I can look at the thumbnails and identify the individual designers.
I think you can identify them, but I think there's a step more than just being able to go, this is that, but by being able to say what they stand for. And I think that's why people have warmed so much to Simone, because you can really say what she's about.
So identifiable.
Whereas there are other designers who are equally...
Well, you can say it without having to think about it.
Exactly.
I think that's my problem, is that it's easy to throw it into that box. And people don't generally like thinking anymore. And I think that's the problem, that creativity, fashion, everything, that's the issue for us. It really is a problem, is that people aren't willing to engage with these collections or those thumbnails for long enough to even care. And they are just going, okay, that's that girl. You know, walking down on Sloane Street, I was just really depressed to see the same models in the same windows, in the same campaigns. And I just thought, out of all the models in the world, all the brands just use the same ones for one season. And you just think that therefore is making everything kind of almost so recognizable that you're missing what you're talking about, that kind of that very recognizable identity.
Which I wonder is why Saint Laurent has done so well, as much as we all love to hate it, because you can pinpoint the Saint Laurent aesthetic, and it appeals, you know, like the campaign, they don't look like anything else, and it
except
well, they do look like a lot of other things, but
they look like the Couples and all.
You can really,
but I love it. I will not hear a word against it.
So it's interesting because we talked a lot about Versace branding, which is not something we've actually talked about a lot when we've done panels about Versace. So I wanted to talk about that a bit more. And what do we think she's trying to do in terms of the brand building of this collection? So not thinking aesthetically. Do you think, you know, in the press release that we've all picked up on this notion of playful and sexy and fresh? It's definitely something about youth. Do you think this is about trying to get a younger shopper to buy into it? Is that what she's doing here, or is she consolidating the existing Versace girl? What's she doing?
I think you're going to see a lot of music awards. These dresses at music awards and things like that, where you're going to get a younger audience for sure. Thanks.
You're in great form, Declan.
Have you been drinking that?
Nothing left in the bottle.
It's empty.
So I think just by virtue of that, you're pulling a younger audience.
Who do we want to see it though? Who do we want to see it? Because I don't want to see this on Katy Perry or any of those people. No, like or Ariana Grande.
Iggy Azalea is going to wear one of these or something.
Yeah, but
Nicki Minaj will wear one.
I think Rita Ora will be straight into it.
Who's the little one?
I'd like to see it on somebody unexpected.
I'm not saying
she can. Like bling bling sex on legs. Wouldn't it be great to see it on?
Go on.
Carrie Mulligan.
Keira Knightley. No, that's never going to happen. Okay.
No, actually, let's
see Chanel's muse.
No.
But Kirsten Dunst? No, like I'm really blue sky thinking here. But I just think this collection actually, I think we all notice that actually the models aren't permatanned, they're not bleach blonde. They're not, I mean, I think it would be interesting just to expect something. It'd be great to see it on somebody a little unexpected.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't feel as kind of, I'm an object. I will stand next to you at a cocktail party as it can do. You know, it feels a little bit more like...
It would look great on Alexa Chung.
Do you think it's felt like that?
Yeah, that's very true.
Do you think it's felt like that?
I think...
I'm your plus one.
Yeah.
Really?
I think a little bit. I think not... Autumn, winter, the spring, summer before had that kind of vibe of like, even just things like when they do designs that you really can't wear underwear with, or that you couldn't dance in. Whereas this, I know there's lots of cutouts. You could kind of run around at a party in those clothes and not kind of trip on your train. When things are a bit like woo.
But it's just so funny because people really misuse the word like empowerment, and they say this empowers women because it's a flat shoe and you know whatever.
Oh, I think that's ridiculous.
But actually, I think this, if ever, these are really kind of, you have to be quite a ballsy lady to wear one.
But I think that's just
and
really lazy reporting when people are like, oh, she's wearing a flat shoe.
There's an awful lot of that.
Like, you know, it's ridiculous. She can be in like a...
But I think these, I've never seen them as that. I've always seen them as quite kind of powerful and in charge, and the man is the one in the background.
It's always my clothes empower you, and I think women get scared of seeing colourful, bright or embellished clothes, being like, oh, I'm a wallflower, I can't wear that. And the point is, and I've seen it so many times, women put these clothes on and it actually makes them stand up taller. It is empowering, it gives you confidence. And it makes you stand a different way. And I don't think you have to be a ballsy woman necessarily to wear this kind of clothing. You have to have great legs.
No, I think you have to be ballsy to wear that. Like,
I think there's a couple you...
Okay, we're looking at the screen with like...
But I also...
I'm like, if I saw a chick walking around like that, I'd be like, stand down.
I take that one there, the longer one with just the panel. It's quite subtle.
But
42, just anyone could sling on a Saturday. No, but
I like the way you think, though.
I try. It's good.
I want to go to Tesco's with you one day.
Rosanna, what's your next panel you're on? I'm just just wondering.
Yeah, you can.
42.
I'm going to be wearing 42. 42. Yeah.
Blue sky
challenge.
There you go.
But I do take issue. It's interesting, this notion of empowerment, because I take issue with this idea that, you know, it'd be hard for women to wear this, but, you know, get them to sling on a kind of oversized, slightly sheer grey tunic with a pair of like tailored trousers and a flat shoe, and they'll feel great. You know, I really take issue with that. And often you see things like Celine, and people are like, oh, it's so great.
Forgotten about the female body.
But I'm like, no one can wear that. You know, any woman that's not 6 foot and really skinny, if they throw on a kind of pair of knitted flares and like, what the hell? And when people are like, oh, it's really empowering, and I love it aesthetically. I think it's amazing, but it's not empowering just because it's frumpy. Like,
but there's nothing wrong. It's not kind of anti-feminist to sort of celebrate your femininity. And that's a big, I think it's a kind of interesting area of debate.
It's also not anti-feminist to wear like a dress or to show your skin. It's just it's interesting to contrast this with the Tom Ford collection, which I thought was quite offensive and I didn't like. I thought it made women look like objects. When there's a lot of flesh on show here, but it doesn't feel like that same kind of awkwardness. Do you know what I mean? There's a strength to it. I think maybe because there's a wit. I don't know. And a lot of people think Tom Ford is witty, but I just didn't.
No, because his women look quite vulnerable.
Yeah, they did. They look really vulnerable. That's interesting.
I have a question. With these outfits, it's like, other than celebrities, what kind of women do you see wearing them?
Rosanna.
Like, besides Rosanna. Because
not when she's working though.
I think there's a lot of women that just want a great party dress. So I can see
as a party dress.
If you look at 41, the same woman that buys Mary Katranzi, the same woman that buys Mario Schwab, the same woman that buys Matthew Williamson.
Yeah,
I can imagine buying that dress.
There are so many women, and really, if you're going to buy from a luxury brand, you're not. It's often the special occasion shopper who isn't really going to be like, I'd like a blazer, which will make me merge into the background in the workplace. You're like, I want a fun dress for the party season. I want people, I want it to be something almost like an heirloom piece. Well, that certainly would be.
Yeah, and you can't look at it and say that it's not fashion forward, because look at London, everyone's doing cocktail frocks. You know, I know we do great things here and I love it. And I don't mean actually as a criticism, we talked about this on a different panel, Dal, but like, you know, Mary Katranzi, Christopher Kane, they're like kings and queens of the frocks. This is the same market to me. Just, I think it's in Italy, so again, lazy journalism, people are like, oh, it's so antiquated, it's like, blah, 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 it's not fashion forward. But then like 41, if you showed that to someone and said, oh, that was from like a Christopher Kane collection, that was from a Mario Schwab collection, I think you'd say, oh yeah, cool.
Yeah.
So I do think it could be a similar shopper, and which is interesting to think about. Because
yeah,
I think
because when you put Versace in that category,
yeah,
I wouldn't have put them there before.
But then we talked about it as well with, and it's really interesting actually to get your thoughts on this as an image maker, but with online retail, I think more and more, you know, if you're looking at a dress, then it's like you might also like, and if you were looking at a short cocktail dress, I imagine and that popped up as kind of a suggestion if you're on a multi-brand retailer.
It's graphic, isn't it?
I can imagine someone clicking onto that.
Editorially, and like you can see all these ones being shot because they are quite graphic, kind of crazy, but it's just everyday wear. I don't think I could see women wearing them.
But then I wonder, I don't think Versace is, I think if you're a really committed Versace shopper, you'd maybe buy the blazer, but I kind of hear what you're saying, like with the...
See, I've got one friend, my friend Jen, she wears, like she loves Versace.
Yeah.
But like, she wears Versace in like a really ironic, cool way. Like she never wears it like exactly like the Versace shopper, but she'll wear like a slip dress with like the choker and the bag. And I always think she does it really well. But then when I see it here, it's I don't know. But
I think the notion of ironic fashion is so specific to the fashion industry. I think there's a lot of people that dress in a kind of like the vintage Moschino thing. People love to wear clothes in an ironic way, but I think outside of fashion, very few people are like, oh, look at my hilarious vintage Moschino jacket. You know, it's very
because you don't know anyone else that would know how to get the in joke.
Yeah,
so
it's like
doing it. Yeah.
I interviewed Valerie Still once, and she talked about like a secret Masonic handshake. She was talking about Margiela, but it's a similar thing for ironic fashion. You know, it's like, I'm wearing this funny kind of like. Yeah. It's like when
I guess I just think of her wearing these dresses, and I can't imagine her wearing this because it's from Versace or whatever. She will wear something that's just more reflective of the Versace brand, I guess.
It was funny when she came out at the end, Donatella, and she was it was almost like she was like the mistress of her sort of coterie of new young models. You know what I mean? Whereas before, she's almost been wearing pretty much the same thing as they've been wearing on the catwalk. Whereas this time it was, it's like she's the master.
Yeah.
And it's how, you know, it did say in the press release, it's about new and pared back and fresh. And that's the only thing I can draw from that press release in a way.
I just think that the traditional Versace woman, as we know her or believe to know her, just doesn't really exist anymore. Because all of those wonderful excesses that Gianni and the shows and all of that stuff represented are just not cool anymore. I was with a bunch of some students today, kind of, they're all 18, 19, none of them smoked. It's a very simple thing, but none of them smoked. And I was a bit like, oh, okay, fine, okay, this is obviously kind of, but they're not even that they're not smoking, they also frowned on smoking, frowned upon smoking. So you go from that to all of the fun that I imagine a Versace woman used to have circa 92, 3, 4. Then of course she's totally like, you know, we're in a Goop, Gwyneth kind of generation now.
But I think there are some markets that aren't.
There are still some of those ladies.
The Goop generation, oh my god.
Generation, you
I like that.
It's Friday
but
night.
It is,
that's really makes that's really
everything's become very,
this is
very,
not the Goop generation.
you know, everything has become much more puritanical and much more, oh no, it's not kind of cool to kind of promote, you know, excess skinniness, excess, you know, drugs or alcohol or whatever. And I think that's one of the downfalls or the difficulties that a brand like Versace has faced, because let's be honest, that's kind of what their DNA was about. You know, it's about sex, drugs, rock and roll. And as all of those things are sort of seeped away and become much tidier and much neater and much more polite, then where are you left with a brand like this? You have to move on in the way that I think they have very successfully done. But it's never going to ever be the Versace of yore, because it can't.
This year has marked a turning point actually for Versace, because they sold a minority share to Blackstone. Right. And I think it has probably, they're predicting record profits for 2014, and I think it probably, maybe that weight off them, and you know, in 2004 they were about to go bankrupt. It really, if you know that your business is in good shape, it probably gives you the chance to actually take a breather and think, right, how am I going to think about couture versus the new vision for Versace? Maybe this is why, I think everything is slotting quite neatly into boxes, like you said. But boxes are dangerous, I know, but
it explains the watches.
It does. It does. It does.
Because like on her couture shows, you're not going to see any watches on the catwalk, obviously. So
it's very interesting that, but it is also interesting because I spoke to a buyer actually, just because they sell Versace, and I asked what sold, and he was like, yeah, everyone's saying about Versace modernising, but he was like, we sell Versace t-shirts and Versace shirts, but we put up, it was in the men's, we put up some like leather jogging pants and they sold out in a day. And I think there is a customer who does want that. And maybe it is in a new market, maybe it's not kind of...
I'm glad.
Yeah.
They're still around. There's some sort of, you know...
I thought you meant you're glad.
No, there's some sort of exuberance and kind of filth going on somewhere. You know, everyone's not sort of sitting around reading and listening to Radio 4 in a navy jumper. I'm glad that that exists.
But it's interesting though, because did you see that, I think it was on WWD, that Prada's profits, they haven't done as well as they predicted in, I think it's in China, and they were talking about a maturing Chinese market where they're actually less bought over, they're less sold just by a brand name now. So Prada have really been banking on that notion of I'll just buy a product.
Yeah, it's because every single mall is kind of cornered by Hermes or Vuitton or Prada, and actually what they now need, they've matured, so actually what they want is it's
fashion.
It's the emerging talent, emerging brands as well, because it's an intelligent consumer. So
But I wonder how brands will move around and how maybe, you know, we're all now the Goop generation eating our granola and, you know, wearing like brandless navy jumpers and whatever. But then I wonder if it'll keep moving and that'll go over to the new markets and then we'll all be wearing this again. Rosanna certainly will, so it's fine.
I'm never going to do normcore.
That's good to know.
Yeah. Oh no.
I think I've been doing normcore my whole life. So
no, you Simone.
Yeah, I do love Simone.
But will Donatella do normcore ever?
Maybe this is her take on normcore.
Maybe this is Donatella's normcore.
Should we give her a round of applause to wrap things up?